And I'm so excited today to be wrapping up our day one. The conversations have been so wonderful today. They're going to be tough to follow, but I'm really excited for my conversation today with
Don't say
Becca.
that.
No, no. All right. Lots of people joining us today. Awesome. All over California, Pennsylvania, more Florida people. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Hannah Fox, and I'm the Customer Experience and Training Manager at Giveffect. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for joining us all day today at Next. And for this session, from local events to multi-state impact, scaling volunteer engagement the right way. For those of you who might not be as familiar, Giveffect is an all-in-one nonprofit platform that brings together the tools that organizations need to operate effectively, including donor management, volunteer management, CRM, marketing, all the things. Our goal really is just to help nonprofits improve efficiency, strengthen their financial stability, and further their mission. Before we dive in, I have just a couple of housekeeping notes. If you haven't already, please say hello in the chat with your name and where you're joining from and your organization. For this session, please feel free to participate by adding your reactions, your comments in the chat. My colleague Nicole is going to be monitoring the chat today. And lastly, please be sure to use that Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom throughout the session. So we'll get to questions during the Q&A portion in the last few minutes of today. All right, at Next, we're talking about what it takes to build a future-ready nonprofit. For so many organizations, volunteers really are the heart of the mission. They expand what small teams can accomplish and bring communities directly into their work. But building and sustaining volunteer engagement is not always straightforward. Some nonprofits are still working to attract consistent participation, and others start to see that momentum and realize that the systems that worked previously no longer are scaling. What begins as a few events and handful of supporters can eventually grow into something so much bigger. And that growth is so exciting, but it also raises so many new questions. How do you organize volunteers effectively? How do you keep people coming back? And how do you scale those programs without overwhelming your team? Today, we're going to hear from someone who's lived that journey. Becca DeLong from Hunger Fight helps support a volunteer model that brings together large groups of volunteers through hands-on meal packing, events, and community initiatives that support families and schools in their communities. Over time, those programs have expanded, and as the organization has grown, their team has continued to evolve in how they recruit, organize, support volunteers so that that growth has remained sustainable. Today, we're so excited to hear what that journey looks like behind the scenes, what worked, what stretched the team, and the systems that helped made that growth possible. So, Becca, if you could start by introducing yourself and also just sharing a little bit about Hunger Fight and the work that your organization does.
Yeah, sure. First, thanks for having me, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm really excited. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so bear with me. But my name's Becca. I'm the Associate Director for Hunger Fight. I've been with Hunger Fight since 2022 officially, but I've been kind of involved in some capacity since it was founded in 2012. My mother actually founded it. She's the executive director, so I've been kind of involved in a volunteer capacity since the beginning. Um, it kind of started as like a little side project for my parents, just something to do to give back because volunteering has always been important to us. And it kind of quickly grew into something a lot bigger, something that no one saw really coming. So it became a full-time commitment. We have two main programs. We have a feeding program and a literacy program. Our feeding program, we try to focus on backpack feeding programs for Title I elementary school students. We keep our meals in the community where they're packed. So we try very much to be community focused. If the meals are packed here in Jacksonville, Florida, we try to keep them right here in Jacksonville, Florida. in the Title I schools or food banks, food pantries, wherever they're needed. Our literacy program, we focus on preschoolers in those same areas. We're trying to hit those kids before they enter the public schools, to get them interested in reading, hopefully get some early literacy skills going. So that's what we do.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. One of the things that stood out when we spoke earlier was how central volunteers are to your work. For someone who has never seen one of your events before, what would it look like to actually walk through the doors at a Hunger Fight volunteer event?
If you walk into one of our events and you've never seen one before, we call it 2 hours of organized chaos. It is energy, it is loud, it's a bunch of different people from different places, packing meals. You might see 300 people all wearing hairnets, beard nets if needed. They're ringing cowbells. We have a couple hundred meals getting packed every few minutes. We have a playlist that we play. Sometimes there's dance breaks. They'll break out with YMCA. Everyone will stop packing. It's loud. It's fast. You have strangers that are just getting to know each other, talking, and you quickly notice that you're part of something bigger. You're part of something hands-on. You're on the front lines. You're packing these meals. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's chaotic sometimes. It's loud, but it's a lot of fun, and it's really eye-opening when you get to actually pack the meals that these kids are going to get. So that's kind of what a hunger fight event looks like.
That's amazing. And it really does just sound like so much fun. Um,
It's a lot of fun.
I think it's so impressive to see what the program looks like today. But, for like most nonprofits, I'm sure it didn't always start that way. So, what did volunteer engagement look like in some of the early days at Hunger Fight?
Yeah, it definitely was a lot different. In the early days, again, it started as like a side project. It was literally a couple and whoever they could get. I know my adult children now, as children back then, were helping in the first events, carrying boxes of meals. We have pictures of them, little guys. It was a couple of friends, whoever they could get to help, just going and helping facilitate these events. The first few events were at small local churches. The congregation volunteered to pack the meals. So it was very, small scale, kind of a lot of learning as we go. It was quickly figuring out that there's more efficient ways to do things. You have to be very flexible, very fluid, able to change, to improvise. But it was a lot smaller. It was a lot of more family, friends, just you know getting a couple of meals packed here and there.
Yeah. You said that as things were growing, you really did have to be more flexible. And as that participation was increasing, what are some of those challenges that you started to run into?
So it became apparent that the need was a lot bigger than we thought. That was the first challenge. It became very clear. We were getting calls, we were getting emails, schools, programs, they lost their funding. They thought they had meals lined up. Of course, COVID, things happen, and the need just grows. And so when the need grows, and that's your mission, is to meet those needs, you have to grow. You have to figure out a way to get more meals out in the community. So growing became the first challenge. Obviously, funding. We're a nonprofit. You have to get funding from somewhere. So getting the community educated as to what the need is to get that funding, get people to sponsor and host packing events, grants, things like that. That was another big challenge. Yeah, obviously, funding. The raising money. Also realizing very quickly that two people were not going to be able to feasibly, run hunger fight and keep doing these events as they grew. It kind of grew beyond them. So the staff obviously grew. That was another thing is people, manpower. It became very apparent that we needed more volunteers. We needed more people. We needed more hands. We needed people that cared about our mission like we did, who would get out there and help us, set up for these events, help us pack the meals, help us, hype people up. So that was another challenge is we had to get help, we had to get volunteers, we had to get people.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that some of the earlier signups were handled through through things like Google Forms. At what point did that approach start to become really difficult to manage? Just thinking about your operations.
Yeah, the days of Google Forms. um, that was stressful times. We and I love Google. We have Google Workplace. It's great, but when these events are scaling, 500, 1,000 people, several shifts, several days, you have people trying to, you know, use one Google form that you're transferring to Google Sheets so that you can print it out. You can check people off. We tried so many things. We had literally handwritten, people would come in and just, okay, write your name and your email on this, sheet. And we use that as our little waiver, sign off, the bottlenecking from things like that. It's crazy when you have 1,000 people trying to get into their line to pack meals and they're trying to sign in, sign their name, or, we had QR codes at one point. We were thinking, okay, they can just, scan the QR code with their phone, sign in really quick. It just still it wasn't efficient. It wasn't reasonable. Especially when you're talking about 2 hours, and people are going to pack 100,000 meals and we have to get them going. It wasn't working. And I think that became pretty apparent pretty quickly. It was a lot of trial and error. I think we tried so many different things. Trying to think of all the different things that we
Yeah.
tried. But it was probably a few years in, maybe even like 3 or 4 years in, that we couldn't do it anymore. So, we tried a couple of different programs, started looking into different things, trying to find out what other nonprofits were using for the same thing, to see if we could, possibly adopt those. But we just knew something had to change. We just needed a really a different approach, a different way of doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a moment that a lot of organizations experience, that what works early on suddenly becomes really difficult once, participation or all things start to grow. So what changes did your team start making to bring more structure to how things were organized?
So one big thing that we know we needed to change was how the volunteers were going to register, how they were going to sign up, how we were going to sign shifts, and those are not only people packing meals, but the people helping us set up, break down, move the meals. We have to palletize them, we have to get them to where they're going. So we knew that we had to find a program, that could do what we needed to do, to get our volunteers, scheduled, structured, get the registrations done. And we tried a couple of different things like Volunteer Hub, Your Cause. I even tried Facebook. I had a Facebook group and I thought if all the volunteers would get on Facebook, I could communicate that way. We could, sign up, do messaging, but not everyone uses Facebook, or they don't check it often enough. So I tried so many different things. I still have a huge binder that we used at one point, that just held thousands of pieces of paper, just, I remember inputting, physically, manually inputting names and email addresses from events just so I could send out like a thank you or a
Mhm.
survey or something, and just knowing that it just was not working. Um, and again, we looked at other nonprofits to try to figure out what they were doing. And you see a huge difference when you're registering, 1,000 people for an event versus, 20, 30. So it was, it was yeah, those days were not fun.
No, they don't sound fun.
No, I don't
I
want to
guess,
do that again.
yeah. What difference, you spoke about it a little bit, but what difference did those changes really make in your day-to-day work? Being able to manage volunteers and events and just overall, like what impact did that make?
Well, and I can only speak for me personally, and I know a lot of other nonprofits are the same way, that we all wear a lot of different hats in what we do. It's very rarely just this is your job, this is what you do. And because I do our social media, I do our marketing, I do our CRM maintenance, I send out invoices and pledges, and I also do the volunteer management. I can't even tell you the difference not having to sit there and manually input thousands of names and emails into a system, just so I could send out an email, just so I could thank them. It literally adds hours and hours to my day, just being able to have a place, I can go to. It's already in there. People can pre-register. I can send them the before the event information. way before the actual day of the event. They can watch training videos. So my day to day, it really was like night and day. I was able to do more grants, grant applications, which, is vital. Um, and we recently opened up an office and a warehouse in Utah as well as Florida. So we're headquartered in Florida. So for the last year, I was out in Utah getting that going. And I was actually doing the volunteer management for Florida and Utah from there, which I wouldn't have been able to do, obviously, if we hadn't have made the changes that we did and advanced our volunteer management system the way that we did. So again, it was night and day having those registrations already available, having everything online, being able to access that immediately, and being able to have a place that if we needed more help somewhere. I know I have a database for our volunteers, and I can just go in and let them know like, hey, we need help this day, this event, and be able to reach out for them.
Yeah. It is amazing how much you've grown, and such a huge congrats on being able to move into another state now in Utah as well. Especially from starting so small to be able to see that amount of growth. It's
Mhm.
really just
It's
so
crazy.
incredible.
Yeah.
So of course you use Giveffect for your
Mhm.
volunteer management. Is there anything specific like about the platform that has made a big difference for you, or any part or module within there that's made a big difference? You talked about the signups and all of that kind of
Mhm.
things, but if you want to expand on anything.
Yeah, and actually, very recently, I have a good example of just how much Give Effect means to me and how how helpful it is. But we were the beneficiaries for it was called Jack's Food Fest and craft fair that just happened last weekend, and we really needed volunteers out there. We need people to sign up for different specific jobs roles during the festival, and I was able to go on Give Effect, create the campaign for the volunteers, put all the different shifts with the times, explanations on there, and literally send out emails and texts from that platform to everyone. And just, we got 20 plus volunteers to sign up for, to help us at the festival. And it was literally just one place, I just went on there. So being able to do that, use that for volunteers, I can go on and I can manage our shifts that we have available for people to come and volunteer at our warehouse every day, and I have Utah and Florida, and to be able to separate that, have those shifts, be able to see like any given time I can log on and see how many volunteers we have for this day, this week, this shift, this event. It was really just, it was great. And the automation to be able to, automatically send something out if a volunteer signs up or registers for something. Again, the hours that I get back to my day to be able to do other important things. There's really no words to give that that effect that it's had for me personally. Our events, which are basically that's the heart of Hunger Fight, I would say, is our packing events. To be able to go on there, make one of our community outreach events, we have like Alachua County, to be able to go on there, say, we have X amount of spots available, go on, register your team. I mean, just to have that function available, register your team, this is your packing line, we put 10 people on a line, they can register their team. It's amazing. It really is, all the different functions that it does for me personally. And not only with volunteer management, but especially with volunteer management. It's great.
I'm so excited to hear. The last time we spoke, you hadn't had Food Fest yet.
Yeah, we
It
didn't
was
have
that
that yet.
upcoming
Yeah.
weekend. So
It
I'm
went
really
really
excited
well.
that
So
it
yeah.
went well. That's amazing. So kind of going back to when Hunger Fight started to grow, and now the organization expanding beyond Florida, opening this office in Utah. I think scaling geographically can really create so many new opportunities, but it also can really stretch an organization. So what did you learn about growing your volunteer module while still maintaining this previous experience that you've curated to make all of these events so successful?
So again, for me personally, it was very eye-opening. Utah is not Florida. um, there's so many differences I can't even begin to even explain. And I think that we tried our best to be prepared to do our homework and things like that before we decided to open up a warehouse there. We picked Utah because we were out there so many times during the year. We did a lot with the LDS church out there. So many events. We would have to send, several of our team members and volunteers out there several times a year. So it just got to where we were like, if we had a warehouse out there, if we had an office, it would be a lot easier to facilitate a lot of these other smaller events that, we were being asked to do out there. Um, so it's one of the big differences is here in Florida, we use our website and social media a lot to get volunteers, and they just go, to our website, click on a link, it takes them to Giveffect, they sign up. In Utah, you use Just Serve a lot, which is a volunteer, search engine to where people can find volunteer opportunities. So I would use that, and I would just link Giveffect to Just Serve, and that's something that we had to just learn. We were wondering why we weren't getting volunteers out in Utah. You have to, get out in the community, ask questions, figure out, it's not Florida, it's different, so what are we going to do? um, it also having more big groups versus individuals. That was one big difference that we weren't really prepared for. Out in Utah, we would get, a lot of youth groups, a lot of clubs, wanting to come by, wanting to help, wanting to work in an event. Florida, we have a lot more individuals, a lot of teenagers, a lot, community service, things like that. So that was another big difference. We do silicone slopes out in Utah. That's a million meal event. People will pack literally a million meals over 3 days, and
Wow.
it's just people coming in and out. It's chaotic, but to be able to facilitate that, to be able to keep that scheduled, the structure, the logistics behind it, it's we don't do anything like that big out in Florida. So that was another, it's huge. It's thousands and thousands of people. It's hundreds of tables, a million meals. So that getting us out, our name out into the community out there as well. It opened the door. We now do packing events for Larry H. Miller, which is Asbury out there, Swire Coca-Cola, again, LDS Church, things like that. So it's a lot different. And I don't think we were quite prepared. I think maybe if we could have sent someone to go live out there for a year first and kind of, see what it's like and get some intel for us, that, probably would have been the only way we could have been more prepared. But yeah, the growth it was very, it does, it stretches you. You are expanding, you're putting another warehouse out there, logistics, shipping, things like that. The weather difference, you don't think about having a warehouse. You have this warehouse here in Florida, it's humid, it's warm. You have these issues. You put a warehouse out in Utah, it's dry, it's cold, there's different issues. Our brown sugar for our oatmeal meal didn't survive. It was too dry. It didn't
So
make it.
interesting.
That was we weren't prepared for that. So there was a lot of things that was surprising logistically that we tried to prepare for. We tried to be ready. We tried to do our homework. It just, thank goodness we got it going and it's
Yeah.
successful. But it was rough. There was rough times. There was times we weren't sure if it was the right timing, that we should have done that, that we made the right decision. But you live and learn, and now we know, and hopefully we can open up other warehouses in different markets. But it was a learning experience for sure.
It's so interesting. I would have never thought about even some of the smaller details like the weather and the way
Yeah.
that that
Hmm.
impacts the food.
Yeah, we didn't think about it either.
Well, no brown sugar, that's okay.
Yeah, no.
One thing that stood out too when we spoke earlier was that so many of your volunteer groups return year after year. So whether that's churches, companies, community organizations, individuals, like you mentioned in Florida, make these events just part of their annual activities and annual schedule. What do you think really contributes most to that retention?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping what the biggest contribution and to our volunteer retention is just that it's fun, it's hands-on, it's different. We keep our meals in the communities where they're packed. So if we're reaching out trying to get funding from these businesses, these organizations that are out in the community, and we tell them like, listen, these meals are going to be in your community. They're going to go to the schools that are right here. They're going to go to the students, the children, the families that need them right here in your backyard. I think that makes a big difference. Also, the hands-on approach when even a donor, if we're soliciting somebody for a donation and they're excited about our mission and it aligns, um we don't just want your money, we want you. We want you to come to an event, we want you to get your friends, your family, your coworkers, your employees, whoever. Don't just give us money, don't just write us a check, but come and pack the meals, because you can write us checks all day if there's nobody to pack the meals. But we can't get the meals to the children. So we worked really hard to break down the lines, the barrier, the difference between donors, volunteers, supporters, friends, families. You're all part of the family. You're all, we're a big team. We are all after the same mission. We want you to be on the front lines, come pack the meals. Um, Again, we can't send home 25-pound bag of brown sugar or rolled oats with a child. That's not going to help them very much. So, we have to have the volunteers, we have to have the people packing the meals. So I hope that that's what it is. And it's
Mhm.
exciting when we have places that it's like their 12th annual packing event, and you're like, okay, so we're doing something right. Like we have schools, we have churches, we have Rotary clubs, we have goodness, there's high school, I forget what they call it. They're clubs, they're impact clubs that, and you're getting like 10th, 12th annual event. And it's very exciting. Um, but we try to just treat our volunteers like family. We'll have somebody come to the Florida warehouse to volunteer, a couple of days, and next thing they know, they're on a plane to Utah to help us with a big event. It just, if you're passionate about our mission, then you're gonna be part of our team. So I think that it's the fun, it's the hands-on, it's the local mentality. A lot
Mhm.
of people, when you talk about hunger, third world countries are the first thing that pops into your head, which is absolutely, there's a need, absolutely. But there's also children here in our own communities that they're not sure where their next meal is coming from. So I think that's the big difference, and that's where a lot of our retention comes from.
Yeah, I mean, I think that through talking to you, you've mentioned so many times that you really like your volunteer base and your community is your family. And I think that
Mhm.
does create such a nice community for people and almost like a social group. It
Mhm.
just it goes beyond just volunteering and really gives people like something to belong to also.
Mhm.
And that, I think can mean so much to people. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, I love that. One thing that I think will resonate with so many nonprofit leaders listening to your team is that you guys are relatively small for the amount of work that you're doing, in 2 states. And many nonprofits are trying to grow these programs while wearing many hats, like you mentioned
Mhm.
previously. What has helped you and your team continue to grow your impact while also still protecting your staff's capacity?
Um, so I think, and we are a small team. There's only 10 of us, who are actually employees of Hunger Fight. A big thing is our volunteers. We lean heavily on our volunteers. We really do. We can't do the work we do without them. So to help protect our staff, because we are so staffed and we do wear a lot of hats, and it is, it's a big job when you think, you going to work, you're not just feeding your own family, you're feeding hundreds of families, so you have to show up, you have to do the work. Um, we do lean heavily on our volunteers to make sure that we can get done what we need to do every day. We also utilize our resources like Giveffect. We use our tools. We use bomb for marketing, social media. Those are all helpful tools to help us grow, help us get our name out, help educate the community as to what the need is. We also, as an organization, we close the office a couple weeks out of the year, different times of the year, so that our employees can spend time with their families and, have some time off, because compassion fatigue is real. Burnout is real. Those are very real things. And, we are people. So, it's important to make sure that our staff is taken care of. So those are some things that we do. to make sure that, the strain of us growing, our organization growing, the number of meals growing, doesn't kill our staff.
Yeah, that's so important. Are there any milestones or moments that really illustrate the scale of what your team has been able to accomplish?
Um, our biggest, what we lean heavily on, our milestones are how many meals and how many books we've gotten out into the community. So we're currently almost at 32 million meals that we have put out in the community since Hunger Fight started. Our books, the literacy program is rather new. It's only a couple of years old, but we're at a little over 500,000 books that we have gotten out into the community. So those are our biggest, I guess that's why we do what we do. So to be able to look at those numbers and know that it's worth it, we're doing something. There are kids and food pantries and food banks and backpack feeding programs that depend on us. So
Yeah.
those are milestones. We have grown to about a little over 80 different packing events a year. So
Wow.
that's another big milestone is we average about 80 events a year. So that's another, we stay busy and you know, very thankful for that growth and sustainability that we've gotten to.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. As you guys continue to grow, how do you see your volunteer engagement evolving over the next couple of years?
So that's our aim. Obviously, I hope,
Mhm.
fingers crossed that we continue to grow and expand. There's always a need. Again, I think COVID was a big one that just reiterated how unprepared we are for certain things. So the need for meals grew. It also set a lot of students back when school was stopped or when it went virtual. A lot of kids fell below the reading level for their grade, and that was a big reason why we pushed our literacy program. So I know that the need is there. I know it's going to continue to be there, unfortunately. So I think the biggest thing that I see for our future volunteer engagement is really just getting the word out. I mean, the future of Hunger Fight, I want us to be like yeah, a well-known, name. I want people to know what we do. I want if somebody says Hunger Fight, I want someone else to be like, yeah, I went to one of their events. It was great. We packed red roni meal and it was fun. And um, basically, it's just getting our name out there, getting more volunteers. Educating the communities on what our mission is, what the need is, where the meals are needed, and being able to go to the other communities that we're not in yet, where there is a need, when we're getting those pleas for meals and be able to, jump on that and get a team out there, get a packing event out there, expand, get a satellite office out there. So really just growing our mission, getting our name out there, getting more volunteers, hopefully getting people excited about what we're doing and wanting to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing for volunteers is just growth and getting our name out there. And I'm learning every day. We're in an age of social media and digital, we live in a digital age and there's so many tools and resources out there and I don't know them all. So I'm learning every day how to get more people involved, how to spread the word, spread our mission, get our name out there. So hopefully our future is just growth and getting more people involved.
Yeah, we're certainly very excited to see the way that you continue to grow. I can't believe that our time is almost already up before we move into our audience Q&A. I have one last question for you before we take some audience questions. Just thinking more about retention, and you mentioned that you really aim to make volunteers feel connected to the mission so that they want to come back. How do you facilitate that? How do you really make people invest emotionally into the events?
So, one thing that I'm hoping to get better at doing is getting feedback from people. I
Mm,
want to have some sort of method, whether it's like a survey or even at the event, if one of our team members just walks around and saying, "Hey, what's your favorite part of the event? What has been surprising about the event? What would you like to see happen?" I do the music at our event, so I would love to have some way of, you want to request a song. let's have some kind of, before the event, put in song requests or during the event, something like that. After the event, sending out a survey or a question answer, or, would you mind giving us a testimonial? You went to our event, just tell us what it meant to you. And also any feedback, any negative, like what would you have rather have seen different? What can we improve? Um was it too loud? Was it too hot? Was
Mhm.
there too many people on your line? Was it too messy? Whatever. There's a lot of things that go into packing events. um but I think when you ask people, I mean, I think as a human, we just want to be heard. We want our opinions to matter. I think that's what engages people and makes them, again, feel like part of the team. So finding ways, and I'm not the best, we're not the best at, at doing that, but I hope to improve that and take that feedback and hopefully use it to keep people engaged and get more, get new people involved. So
I love that. Yeah, I think that's fantastic, and such a great idea to be able to ask people directly, like, what did you think of the event, and
mhm,
how can we improve? And then really being able to implement that feedback
mhm.
just to be able to continue to improve your events. That actually leads really, really perfectly into our first audience question. So, someone asked, "What is your post-volunteer process currently? Do you have one? Do you see a lot of repeat volunteers? I know you kind of spoke to that already. Do you do any volunteer appreciation events? I guess just thinking past the meal packing, what does that
Mhm.
post-volunteer engagement look like?
So again, right now it's not what I want it to be. We do send out like thank you for joining us at an event. We also ask if they know any groups or organizations or businesses that might be interested in an event, if they would share them with us. In the past, we have done the surveys like, what would you have done different? What would you like to see happen next time? What would bring you back to an event? I've had ideas in the past for more local, like in person. Like I wanted to do a volunteer paint night at our warehouse. Like our volunteers can come and, do the paint night thing just to get to know people.
Yeah.
Just to talk to them, let them get to know each other. We haven't been able to do anything that fun yet, but we've had like volunteer just get-togethers where we provided snacks and drinks and just had people come in and socialize. But the biggest thing is recognition. I try to get groups names out in our newsletter and social media, via email, text. Again, Giveffect is great because I can literally just pick a campaign or pick a group and send an email, send a text really fast, like, thank you, what'd you think of our event? So that's kind of what it is now. I'm hoping to get more volunteer events together, even if it's just like come to our warehouse, tour our warehouse, let's have a little Q&A session, help us, people are resources and I don't think that we utilize them as much as we should all the time. So, um, but that's what we do now and what I hope to do in the future.
Awesome. I have another question here. So I know that you all host a lot of meal packing, it's kind of single events. Do you all do any multi-month programs or kind of these ongoing opportunities? They're looking to set up a train the trainer model where they can really engage with volunteers and track their progress over many months or maybe even indefinitely. I guess if you could talk anything about that.
Um, Monthly or recurring, more that would be on the volunteer side of like helping us deliver our meals or deliver our books. We do deliveries usually monthly, quarterly. It's not any more often than monthly. Our packing events, it's more our packing events, like Hunger Fights packing events, are community based, and we have a whole bunch of different people, places that come together into one venue and pack out, hundreds of thousands of meals. And we do those annually. And then we have our smaller events where, maybe it's a church, maybe it's a Rotary group, that kind of spin off from those community events. I'm trying to think with tracking volunteers and like their progress and engagement. I don't think we have anything like that implemented. I'm trying to think of how. I think the most that we do in that aspect is retention. We
Mhm.
want to keep people coming back. We want to keep them interested. we do a lot of statistics for the different community areas to make sure people know, the need in their communities. I don't think we do as good a job as tracking specific volunteers, keeping up with them, asking them like, hey, you used to volunteer, what happened? But that's the closest that we as an organization do.
Awesome. Do you guys do any trainings for your volunteers specifically? I guess just thinking about how you're able to prepare large volunteer groups
Mhm.
or even that sign up process of people, using the system to be able to sign up. Do you find that it's intuitive or is there training involved?
So we do. We actually we have a know before you go is what we call it document that we
Cool.
send out, and I kind of tailor it per the event. So it goes out to all the volunteers that register for the event, and that's going to be training them what they're going to be doing on the line. So the different meals, we have 5 different meals, how packing those meals look, so they're not walking into something and not having any idea of what they're going to be doing. It
Mhm.
kind of helps us speed up the process as well while we're training tables. If they've all seen those training videos before, they know what they're doing. We also do training for volunteers who are helping us with setup. I made little diagrams of our lines and pictures of where everything goes on the line. So I can kind of hand those out and, tell the volunteers, like, this is what the table needs to look like. Just make it look like this, and they try their best. I have done in the past, I made little, I don't want to say a quiz, but kind of like, you watch a video or you read about Hunger Fight and what we do and how our packing events go. And then, answer questions about like, what meals do we offer? What are they called? Things like that. How many meals can one line pack in 2 hours on average? Things like
Mhm.
that, just to kind of get them more engaged and kind of give them an idea of what we do in our events. So again, I know me personally, I wouldn't want to walk blindly into something and not know anything about it, especially, we get a lot of they like teenagers again that need community service hours, and it can be intimidating to walk into an organization or a packing event or whatever with strangers and you don't know what you're doing. So we do have the know before you go with the training videos. We do have training, like we'll have people come by the warehouse, we'll have a line set up just to show them this is what you're going to be doing, this is what you're going to be helping with. We try logistically to have things set up at the events to where the volunteers that are helping us, they're not killing themselves, breaking their backs, trying to run all around, an arena, trying to find ingredients or something. So before an event, we'll walk everyone through, where things are. We have table captains sometimes
Oh, I
at
love
big
that.
events. We'll train the table captains beforehand, and the table captains actually help us train the volunteers. So that's
Yeah.
another idea for bigger events. And again, because we're such a small team, if our small team had to train 100 tables at an event
Yeah.
ourselves, it would take a long time. So
Yeah.
um,
How do you choose those table captains? Are they
we
people
usually
who,
just ask people, yeah,
yeah.
like, would you, while they're registering or signing up, or, sometimes we'll reach out to like, say, Teen Challenge or an ROTC group at a high school, or,
Mhm.
we are a big military town. We'll have a group from the base, from a specific ship, and they all want to volunteer. Like, hey, do you want to be table captains and help us train tables? Or, if a specific organization, like we did a big one with New Skin out in Utah, their
Mhm.
staff actually were our table captains. So our team of two got their employees together, and we trained them before the event so that they could train the volunteers. So we find them different ways, but
Yeah.
that really has made a difference at big events is having those table captains.
I think that's such a cool idea, even just to be able to leverage some of your repeat volunteers or people who
Hmm.
do have a lot of experience and do know what to expect,
Yeah.
and then being able to give them a bigger role within the
Hmm.
event. I think that can also probably mean
We
a
even
lot to
have,
them.
yeah, some of our board members have just been to so many different events. They just take over training, like
Yeah.
anytime, anyone who's come to several events and knows what's going on, again, sorry, you're part of the family, you're going to work. Like,
Yeah.
like
You
that's
really
just, that's
thought
how it is.
through
So.
You really thought through so many small details of the
Mhm.
entire volunteer experience. Even like you mentioned, for me too, I would be also intimidated, not knowing what I'm getting into going into
Yeah,
some, like
yeah.
sometimes even small things about
Mhm.
like where to park or what to
Mhm.
wear, like just those questions that are barriers to people
Mhm.
wanting to attend. So I think it's really awesome the way that you've thought through that entire experience.
Yeah, and on the know before you go, there's little things like that, like, hey, show up 15 minutes before your start time. Wear something comfortable that you don't mind getting
Hmm.
a little messy, things like that. That again, and I can only empathize from my perspective. I'm a shy, introverted person. I don't want to walk in somewhere where I don't know anyone and not know what's going on. That just not be fun to me. So
Yeah.
we try to prepare people as much as possible.
Yeah, that's great. One more question here. For organizations that are still using spreadsheets or some of the more basic tools, was there like a signal or a really strong point in time that you were like, okay, this is time, it's time to invest in a more robust system? Or do you have any ideas of what those signals could be?
Well, for me, it was the tears that came with sitting there and inputting a million different names and email addresses from all of these different sources from different events. It got to where it was just I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, there
Mhm.
has to be a better way to do this. When you're spending days, just inputting data, and you that data is invaluable. You have to have it. As a nonprofit, like, again, like people are resources. That's the only way to survive. So for me personally, it was just I couldn't do it anymore. Um, I think a signal that I would look for is if it's overwhelming, if you have to go and take a break and a big deep breath before you get started in that aspect, then there's probably an easier, more efficient way to do it. If
Mhm.
it's gotten beyond the capacity of like, hey, we have a volunteer in the warehouse today, can they sit down and take a couple of hours and input this data, or clean up this spreadsheet, or whatever the thing is. If it's beyond that, then it's probably a good time to find something more efficient. But it shouldn't be painful. It shouldn't be time consuming. It shouldn't be its own job. You shouldn't say like, oh, we could hire someone just to do this. There's tools and resources that literally can do that job for you. So to me, those are some of the things that I would stop and say, like, there's a better way. There's a more efficient way.
I think that's practical and great advice. Before we wrap up, one final question that we've been asking all of our next speakers. So, for nonprofit leaders who do want to build a future-ready organization, what is one shift that they could make in how they engage volunteers that would have the biggest impact?
I love this question. I loved it when it was mentioned to me before. Again, we live in a day where it's so digital, it's so social media, it's so impersonal. That's just the world that we live in now. So I think one shift that organizations could make is humanizing the organization, humanizing volunteers. Um, we get so caught up in emails, in text, in social media, shout outs, in, putting so and so in your newsletter and making sure you shout out, tag them in your social media posts and make sure that you're mentioning them, on LinkedIn. And I think that we've taken away the personal human part of what we do. And in every nonprofit, you're doing something to help someone. That's why we
Mhm.
exist, whether it's meals, it's helping animals, it's building houses, it's whatever your purpose is. You have a purpose, you're doing something. Um, but taking a volunteer, giving them a handshake, giving them a hug, asking about their family, asking about their hobbies, getting to know them, and letting them know that you're human too. Like, I
Yeah.
have kids at home. My kid was sick last week. I understand how stressful that is. Thank you for you're volunteering your time, which is the most valuable thing that we have to give people. So just putting that human touch back into it, to me, I think would be a shift that's really going to make you stand out, have the biggest impact, hopefully grow your organization, grow your volunteers, and keep them coming back.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Becca, for sharing your experience with us today. I think one thing that out of the many that stands out of this conversation is just that volunteer growth doesn't happen on accident. It happens when you
Mhm.
build the systems and the structure to allow volunteers to show up and have a meaningful experience and also come back again. And when that happens, volunteers really do become more than just participants. They
Mhm.
become, in your words, they become family.
Mhm.
And that kind of intentional approach is such an important part of what building a future ready nonprofit means. So thank you so much again for being here
Thank
and
you.
sharing your story with us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. It's a good experience.
Awesome. And I'll pass it off to my colleague Tara, who will share a few announcements.
Hi, everyone. Well, first off, big thank you to Becca, big thank you to Hannah, everyone joining us on this session, to all of our speakers throughout today, and all of our attendees who really joined in the conversation. The chat was so active. We love that. We had so many questions. We couldn't even get to all the questions, but not to worry. This is just day one. And day two is taking place tomorrow, starting at noon. So we hope to see you all there. I just wanted to share a couple quick announcements and reminders. All right. So let me see here. We've said this a few times. I'll say it one more time. But if um, if learning about how some of the nonprofits have been able to leverage Giveffect throughout today's sessions has resonated with you, if you'd like to learn more, if you want to schedule a strategy call with our team, a strategy call is not a demo. It's a first initial call just to see, how can we help you? What are your challenges? What are your goals? What are you looking to do? To see, what is the best next step for you to achieve that. And along those lines, for all the attendees at Next, and we very, very, very rarely do any kind of offer, is for all attendees, we will be offering free data migration and $1,000 off any subscription in year one. So, in order to be eligible, all you need to do is book that strategy call by March 31st. Of course, you don't have to have that call by March 31st, but just get that scheduled. And then if you choose to move forward with Giveffect by June 30th of this year, then you'll be eligible for this offer. So I'll also share this via email. So if you are not able to quickly grab this off the screen, it's okay. One other thing that we've shared is that we are doing something fun during next, and that is we are sharing or providing give a coffee on us for our winners. And so we'll be selecting winners today, which you can see the names right up here, tomorrow, and on Friday. So if you did not win coffee on us today, not to worry, you can still participate. All you need to do is simply follow us on LinkedIn, share a key takeaway in the comment by finding one of our next related posts on LinkedIn, and then in the comments tagging Giveffect and sharing one thing you've either learned or hope to learn. So would love to see, what you found valuable today or what you're hoping to gain from um, tomorrow, day two, or Friday, our tech spotlight. For those of you who did win, we will be reaching out to you by Friday with your gift card. So, congrats to you. And with that, um, we hope you found today valuable. And tomorrow we will continue the conversation with sessions focused on team collaboration, fundraising, impact without burnout, and how you can make change stick. So, we're looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow. And until then, have a good evening.